Hello, and welcome to the History of Geometry in less than 5 minutes. So, you may reasonably be asking yourself, what is geometry? Well, geometry is a type of mathematics specifically focused on spatial relationships. The word itself comes from two ancient Greek words, geo, meaning earth, and metron, meaning measurement, leading you to the logical conclusion that it began with basic measurements on and about the earth. Although it was originally focused on shapes and proofs, modern geometry has expanded and some higher versions of it are in fact much more abstract. Did you know? Geometry was one of the first types of mathematics. The other earliest version of mathematics that we know of is arithmetic, or the study of numbers. So that was the basic math thousands of years ago. The study of shapes, geometry, and the study of numbers, arithmetic. The most famous geometry is Euclid. He wrote a textbook that became so widely copied and recopied and reused, it is still used in parts of the world today. And his explanation, his definitions of terms and principles was so clear that from his textbook, many other types of geometry could logically be deduced. He was not the first geometry. His was not even the first geometry textbook, but his was so clearly written, so widely known that two branches of geometry are actually named after him. The traditional form of Euclidean geometry and a more abstract modern version that is also known as non-Euclidean geometry. However, as I said, he was not the first to study shapes and spatial relationships. We see some of the earliest geometry over 1,000 years before Euclid in India, Mesopotamia, and Egypt, each of them interacting and trading with each other. So some of this could have been independently rediscovered in each place, and some of it could have been spread and shared through travel and through people. This geometry was especially emphasizing things like lengths, areas, angles, and volumes, and it was used for very practical real-world things, some of which are still in existence today. Things like large temples or ziggurats. Look at all these angles and how the blocks are cut and shaped to fit together clearly, as they were in the irrigation networks in ancient Egypt alongside the pyramids, in ancient India, in their buildings, and the world's earliest indoor plumbing, as well as things like the observation of astronomy, the stars, and the movement of the heavens through things like the zodiac, all of which are studied and made possible through ancient geometry, as well as things like crafts, things that are built to a specific shape, size, form, and function. Many of these ideas were informed and borrowed by the ancient Greeks. Prior to Euclid, the people like the ancient Greek mathematician and philosopher Pythagoras, who we don't actually know much about, but who is named for the Pythagorean theorem, the way that you determine the length and the angles of the sides and parts of a triangle. He got his ideas from earlier people across the globe who also had a similar way of calculating the angles of a triangle, as well as in ancient Egypt and India and Mesopotamia, the use of geometry for shapes and buildings. As I said, even the most famous textbook was based on earlier textbooks. You also see geometry being used in ancient China. Here is a chart of the area of a triangle and the shapes and angles, as well as the Islamic world, more widely known for their algebra, but they also used geometry and in fact combined the two into what is now known as algebraic geometry. That idea of combination is critical. Geometry, like all important developments in human history, was the work of many people. Although it was first popularized by the ancient Greeks, they built on the knowledge of other people, just as later people built on their knowledge. It will also not surprise you to learn that many women contributed to geometry as well, as they did to every important field. Some of the most important ancient Greek geometers, part of the Pythagorean school, were women. Unfortunately, we do not know much about them in particular, but we do have visual evidence of women geometry teachers in the ancient European world, as well as in France, where they studied geometry and added to many important theories, as well as recently in America, where important women of color added to our knowledge of math and helped to plot the calculation of the space system, which was the basis for the movie Hidden Figures. Thank you very much.